Our next guest does it all at ESPN, NFL, SEC, college football, you name it. She's all over the place, and she'll be in Knoxville this weekend as A&M and Tennessee square off. Laura Rutledge joining the program. Laura, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
So I told you I wanted to talk initially about this Wembley Stadium experience for you. I got to go a few years back. It was amazing. How was that experience for you? Watching the NFL abroad there with a bunch of Brits who are starting to slowly get into the game.
Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those bucket list pinch me moments for sure. And having done a game there last year as well, I sort of knew what to expect this time to the point that I feel like I could enjoy it a little bit more and appreciate it. And I mean, it's just so cool when you walk up to iconic Wembley and you see the stadium and you see just every single NFL team represented, some college teams represented. I actually was down on the field and looked up and saw a Florida Gators shirt on a woman. And I was like, okay, I didn't expect to see that either. But it's just really fun. There's this buzz throughout the entire game when you're in Wembley. And I think it never gets quiet. It's always kind of loud and there's just like constant noise and it feels different. It feels special. And I'm just truly thankful to be able to go out there and have that experience. London is becoming one of my favorite cities for sure.
How hard is it for you to prep for both? I know people do it, but it's difficult to know the SEC in and out and also the NFL during the same time in the same week with a broadcast on Friday and Saturday. And, I'm sure it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, my brain is scrambled eggs, I think, most of the time. I'm like, okay, wait, we got to compartmentalize and keep some things over there and some things over here. But I think one of the things that helps me is you can, doing the NFL every day, I can sort of know things kind of throughout the week. I'm always covering it. I'm doing that show daily with NFL Live. So I think there's more of like a working knowledge there all the time. And then it allows me to find like little pockets of time, usually when I'm at work, when I'm not at home, with the chaos at home. So when I'm at work, I'll try to start working on SEC Nation throughout the week. And, it's a matter of trying to like make every moment count. And there's not a lot of downtime. I'm always like, it's funny. My mom always says like, I only have time for every single thing in the day. Like there can't be an extra thing that's added or there's just no time for it. But I always remind myself too in the craziness that, this is beyond my wildest dreams of what I ever thought I would be doing. So I am very thankful and that helps sometimes with some of the prep.
Laura, let's talk about A&M. They lost a heartbreaker to Alabama, a game that they were leading.
Sure.
They have to go to Neyland Stadium now and take on a Tennessee team that's been waiting. I feel like this game for both programs is a fork in the road moment. So talk to us how big it is for both of them considering what's ahead in the SEC.
Yeah, I think you said that really well. This is sort of the game now with what's happened for both these teams, but maybe even more for A&M, where you sort of figure out, okay, what's the rest of the season going to be? I mean, I still think the SEC West is potentially going to end up being this like cannibalistic situation and you never know what can happen, right? And A&M's chances certainly to make the postseason and potentially go to the playoff, those may be diminished, right? But I do think that they can still contend and they can still finish the season strong. They're still such a talented team. You saw that on display. I mean, that's why it's got to be so incredibly frustrating for Aggies fans because we saw it against Alabama. It felt like a winnable game for them in so many ways. Alabama made a ton of mistakes and yet, still not able to get it done. I mean, the fact that they're doing this too with essentially a backup quarterback who's looked really good, in my opinion, overall, is really impressive. So I do think going on the road adds a unique element. It is so loud in Neyland. You guys know that. I mean, it's just one of the craziest environments. But I think A&M's the better team, and that's where I think we're going to really find out, what they're made of. I mean, that now is time to buckle down here and get something going. And Josh Heupel teams, even though they're not what they were last year, certainly Tennessee, but they're well coached and they're going to be ready for this one, like you said.
Laura, is it fair to say A&M, as good as they are talented-wise, or maybe still a mystery team because of their secondary?
I think so. That's obviously the glaring hole. And the D-line has been so good. I mean, there are so many positives. A lot of times, you can sort of mask a secondary issue if your front seven is pretty good, and they are, right? But I do think, unfortunately, there is a recipe for how to beat them, right? And if you can execute that, which Tennessee can, not like they could have last year, and I don't mean to keep referencing that, but I do think it's important for fans to remember, like, last year was a totally different year for Tennessee. They are not, that team for sure. So they're going to try some things, I think. And look, I mean, if you know that, which A&M does, they're going to try to take shots, whatever you can do to disrupt the quarterback, they need to do. I mean, Milton is not the most accurate quarterback, as we know. So I do think there are some ways to affect him. And that, to me, is going to be the recipe for success for A&M if they're going to win this one on the road.
Am I living in the moment, or does it feel like, yep, Bama figured it out? Here we thought that they're going to have an off year. Their defense is amazing, and Jalen Milroe's freaking Joe Montana out there throwing darts to everybody. They figured it out, right? Or is it just a one-time thing?
I don't know. I mean, I just hate it for A&M fans because it's like, golly, of course, we couldn't get Alabama when Texas got them, right? But anyway, they have figured some things out for sure, right? And I think you're right. The defense has looked a lot better, and you kind of see why Nick Saban wanted Milroe to be the quarterback from the get-go and wanted to get the most out of him, because that athleticism was on display. There was the one play where he scrambled and ran for a chunky yards, and I thought, okay, that's what it is right there. And we know he's got that in his game, but you didn't feel like he was comfortable enough in what he was doing in the offense to really feel like he could go and do that and create. And certainly they'll have design quarterback runs throughout the rest of the season, but I think the ability to, when a play breaks down, to have that electric ability to run makes such a difference, as we all know. So I think they figured some things out. I still think Georgia's the best team in the SEC and potentially the best team in the country, because they also look like they figured some things out against Kentucky. It was almost like poor Kentucky, because they're a good team, but it was not conducive to get Georgia after they had barely escaped Auburn and, wanted to come out there and make some sort of big old statement at home. And that's exactly what they did. So I think Alabama, though, is knocking on the door of potentially breaking out. But again, to reference the SEC West, like I did before, A&M still a really strong contender in the West. You've got LSU that you got to think about, which they've disappointed, but they're still a really good team. So I think it's interesting. None of these teams in the top of the West make me think, oh, they're just going to have an off day and look terrible. I think they're all contenders, and they're all teams that nobody wants to face.
You mentioned one right there in LSU, and they had that fork in the road moment last week against Missouri, but it feels to me that Jayden Daniels has to play Heisman-esque for them to continue to win. Am I right?
You're right. And I hate it for them, because I do think they have a national championship level offense, but their defense just leaves so much to be desired. And, to be basically last week, I mean, they've played at least 3 different defensive schemes throughout this year. They just cannot figure it out, and they're still trying, and they did some things against Missouri, but, Missouri's good, but that was a back and forth battle on the road that, LSU was lucky to escape with a win there too. So I think they're going to look back on this season and unfortunately feel like they wasted an offense and wasted some of the talent that Jayden Daniels has, but yet still, again, they're scary, because even defensively, the schematically hasn't been great, but they have some talent there. It's just it's odd because all the DBU stuff, their secondary is a problem too, in a big way.
All right, let's close out with Arkansas, because I really like Sam Pittman, and they're staring 5 losses straight in the face this weekend against Alabama. So does he have enough grace there, you think, to survive this stretch?
I think so, and I hope so. I'm with you. I think Coach Pittman's one of the greatest, and I think it's tough because, a lot of people are like looking at this year and they say, well, KJ Jefferson's back. You got Rocket Sanders as the running back. The defense is, palatable, at least a little bit better than last year. Their secondary is a problem too. That seems to be a theme with some of these teams that are losing. It makes sense. But, and I hate to make excuses for Arkansas and for Pittman, but every year they have the most difficult schedule. I mean, it's just like death taxes in Arkansas's schedule is going to be terrible. So I don't know if Arkansas fans are willing to continue to give him that pass. I mean, it's a very proud program, a proud fan base, as we know. But yeah, they have not at all lived up to the billing. I think one of the problems in going into the season, we wondered about this. They didn't really have any other than Rocket Sanders, any proven weapons at the wide receiver position that you felt like, oh, okay, we could really rely on this person. They didn't have a lot of that, and also I think the defense again has given them trouble. But I hope they'll continue to give him. They love him there, but they are also a fan base that thinks they should be winning a lot more than they are. So that one's a tough one.
Laura, we love your work. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's do it again.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks so much. Hopefully we'll see you in Knoxville.